All right, Brian. The next part of the show on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by FanDuel. We are going to be talking about a 2027 commitment that just announced he is committing to the University of Notre Dame. And we are talking about 2027 lineman Richie Flanigan from, I believe he goes to Notre Dame Academy in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Yep.
And he is actually, I believe, the younger brother of James Flanigan. So he is now committed to the University of Notre Dame in the 2027 class. He's a 6'3", 265-pound lineman. And I believe Notre Dame outbattled Wisconsin and Duke for this recruitment. Yep. So this is a good pickup for the 2027 class.
Also, Michigan was recruiting him for a while. I think they realized that he was going to go to Notre Dame. Had offers from Illinois, Northwestern, Stanford. His offer list did not take off the way that I think it would have, Trev, because I believe that there's a lot of people that knew that this was going to ultimately happen. That he was going to end up at Notre Dame. It was one of those things, if Notre Dame wants him, then they're going to get him. And Notre Dame's always wanted James or Richie. There was never a question about whether or not they wanted him. The only question, and then I think it's still there, is where is he going to play? So the thing about Richie is he's a two-way lineman, and there's been a lot of talk that he could play D-line, he could play O-line. I honestly think that with this commitment, a part of this with Richie is going to be how does the rest of the class fill out, and how does he fill out? He's currently a junior in high school, so he's got the rest of his junior season plus his senior season to fill out his body and grow and develop and fill out and have his game develop and go. So good player. He's a top 250 caliber player. He's ranked at number 222 overall by On3. Listed between 6'3", 6'4", and listed between 6'2.5" and 6'3". He's listed anywhere from 265 to 280. Haven't had a chance to watch his senior film yet. Have watched his junior film or sophomore. I haven't had a chance to watch no one's watched his senior film because he's not a senior. I haven't had a chance to watch his junior film yet. I think they've only played 3 games so far, but he's a good football player. He's a good football player. And I think right now he's more of a natural D lineman, but I could see a world in which offensive line becomes the position for him, like center, guard, something like that down the road. Shocker, everyone. Shocker. A Flanigan is tough and physical and kind of strong. I know that's going to shock some people that watch his dad play and watch his brother play, but yes, he is definitely he is a Flanigan. There's no doubt about that, and he's a good player. We're not going to do like a full breakdown on him right now. We'll do something on him later. We'll do like the backstory and class impact and what's next and all that. But we'll kind of just have some of the film playing while we're doing the show instead of doing a full breakdown, and we'll do something on Richie here a little bit later, just so people know. But Trev, this is one of those recruitments where it's not really about will he commit to Notre Dame, but more so like when will he commit to Notre Dame is really where this one's been for a while. And you guys will see on the film, quick kid, built very differently than James. James is tall and long. Richie's more short and squatty. Richie's built more like his dad was than what now James is. And, if you guys remember Jim Flanigan, who was a teammate of Bryant Young and, actually not even a teammate, a position mate. They were starters on that 93 defensive line for Notre Dame, but real tough kid, physical kid, good short area quickness, as you guys see there. He's a kid that Notre Dame has liked for a while. I think the only question for Notre Dame early on was how big is he going to get? Because Richie isn't like a huge kid, where James was like 6'5" and, ranging athletic and played tight end. There was never a question that James was going to be a dude for you. I think for Richie, it was like, let's see how he fills out. And he filled out pretty well as a sophomore, and he's only getting bigger now. So he got to the point where it's like, okay, this is a no-brainer kid that we want. Has, good length, quality athleticism, and Notre Dame got on him and offered him pretty early and has been on him. He's been on campus multiple times, not just as a visitor with James, but also as a recruit as himself also. So I think this was more of one of those ones, Trev, where it was never really a doubt about whether or not James would commit. It was just when and what position ultimately will he end up playing. But I think the fact that he can play both is kind of important. If I had to guess, I would guess he starts on the D-line. As like if they were to say right now, my opinion, where's he going to play? I'd say D-line. but I just think how the rest of the class fills out and how his game fills out and how his body fills out over the next 2 years is going to have a little bit of something to do with that. But there's not a ton of backstory to this one, Trev. It really is. His dad went here. His brother goes here. He wants to go here. If Notre Dame wants him, they're going to get him. And Notre Dame definitely wanted him. And I've actually asked this question, Trev. I'll be honest. I've asked a few people, all right, listen, do you guys really want Richie Flanigan, or is this just more of a legacy kid and you want to do right by his brother and his dad and all that? And the answer was like, oh, absolutely. This is a kid that we like. Where will he be on the pecking order eventually down the road? I mean, that depends on a lot of kids, how they develop and all that. But this is not we're taking him because of who his dad is or who his brother is. They like Richie Flanigan. He's a good football player that this staff likes a lot. So I thought that was important to say, because there's going to be people that are understandably going to ask that question. And this is a kid that Notre Dame wanted, and he, like I said, he's a good football player.
No, I agree. And I mean, when you go and you pop in the film, it's not a mystery as to why. You're absolutely right about his short area quickness. He plays aggressive. He plays fast. Some of the things that we hope to see on Saturday from this Notre Dame football team. But I agree. But Brian, when you dive into the class impact, he's the 4th overall commitment in the 2027 class. He's the 2nd defensive player behind linebacker Ellis McGaskin. He's also your first commit on the defensive line. So he is, he's kind of some of the foundation of what's going to go into this overall defensive class for 2027. And I do like the angle of that. It is a legacy kid. It's somebody that Notre Dame does want. It's somebody that has lineage tying back to Notre Dame. And then, of course, when you go and you pop in the film, it's really impressive to see what he's done so far. But class impact, Brian, he's first defensive line commit. I know that they're far from being done there. I know we'll talk about more of that and what's next, but it's a good pickup.
Even inside, right, exactly. But it's a good foundational pickup too, Trevor, because, again, you've established that first defensive line pickup in the class. You've established a level of, okay, we're going to be a physical football team. I think that last one was an offensive line snap of his. There aren't a lot of offensive line snaps on his highlight film from the sophomore year. So we'll go back and watch that one for him. You can see, obviously, he's an interior guy. But he's the kind of kid that's going to be your grinder, your hard worker, your glue guy in the class at the minimum. He's probably going to be on campus a decent amount. He gives you a good recruiter in the class. And again, he's a top 250 player on 3. So it's not like he's some 3-star kid that nobody's ever heard of, whose dad just happened to go to Notre Dame, and so they're taking him as a thanks to his dad. This is a top 250 football player. Now, will he end up ranked in the top 250? I have no idea. And those rankings are, you know how those things are. Yeah. But this is a kind of kid that you're going to be like, okay, this is going to be a good foundational pickup for your defensive class and for your class overall. I mean, he's probably going to be, more games down the road. This isn't like he's going to make one trip to Notre Dame a year because he lives, 2,000 miles away, right? I mean, this is a kid that, where he lives in Wisconsin's that's not that tough of a drive to get into Notre Dame, and people forget I think you could probably get to the Wisconsin border in like 2.5, 3 hours from South Bend, I believe, Trev, or is even a little, depends part of it, maybe a little bit quicker.
It could be a little quicker. Yeah.
But no, I like this pickup. It's a good foundational pickup. And he's a tough kid like his brother. I think he also plays hockey, I believe, like James did. So, like I said, it's good foundational pickup for Notre Dame. Tough kid, and I think class impact wise, you now can focus on your dudes at D tackle. Yeah, you talk about getting a kid like this on the board early. It's like, okay, now we can narrow the board. There's a lot of other kids that we can take off the board, and we can now focus on the studs that are at the top of the board.
You know who he kind of reminds me of when he plays? I know we're just kind of letting the film roll here, but kind of reminds me of a Heinisch. Good short area quickness, more Donovan than Kurt. Kurt was a little bit more of a space eater. Donovan was more of the slasher, and he gave you a little bit more quick penetration. That's who Richie Flanigan kind of reminds me of a little bit here.
You know what's interesting about that, Trev? Regarding how they play at Notre Dame, you're correct. Regarding how they looked in high school, I think he looks a lot more like Kirk did in high school. Kurt, when he committed Notre Dame, was like 265 when he first committed Notre Dame as a basically a junior. And then Kurt filled out real nicely and got to be a 300-pounder. I think James is going to be more like Kurt in that he's 265 now. He won't be 265 for very long.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, and he may not even be 265 now. He lists himself at 280 now. So we'll see. But so you're correct on he's built more like Donovan with how they were in college. But I think if you went back and watched Kurt coming out, much more similar style of play than what Donnie was at the same age. So I do like the pickup.
Me too.
It's a good way to start the class.
It is. It is. I know we've already touched on it a little bit, Brian, but let's talk some about what's next. I mean, the 2027 class is just getting started. You know, like I said, they have 4 total commits. He's your first defensive line commitment, second defensive line commit, or second defensive player commit overall. So where does Al Washington go from here in this class?
Well, when you talk about, obviously, the defensive end class is still wide open. So this doesn't have any impact on the defensive end class. When you look at the D tackle class, as I said, I think what this allows you to do is, you know, maybe some guys that you know, were somewhat on your board, but not sure if you're in love with that guy or not. Those guys may not be as big a takes as maybe they were before. You can now narrow your focus on the impact guys. I think Notre Dame would like to get 3 D tackles in this class. They got 2 in last year's class. They got 2 the year before, but I think that they're going to view, well, we're technically 1 true interior the year before. Although I think they always anticipate Gordy Solstead was going to move inside. So I would say 2. And then maybe 3 if Chris Burgess continues to fill out and ends up inside. So I think this year you'd like to get 3. And there's some very talented guys on the board. So one of the super chats we got, and I'll just bring it up now because I think it pertains to the topic that we're discussing, is from Brandon Plensner. Brandon said, is the staff going to continue to push for Parks and Devin Robertson to D-tackle? Thank you for the super chat, Brandon. I appreciate that. But yes, my understanding is yes. My understanding is they're going to take 3 D tackles in this class. And those are 2 of the names. Obviously, Braden Parks is an absolute must-get for Notre Dame in this class in a lot of ways. I would argue the same thing about Devin Robertson. I think they're both must-gets in my personal opinion. But I think you definitely need to at least get one of those 2. But there's also some other guys on the board. There's another kid that the Notre Dame staff really likes as an interior player, Sam Lejeune from Mississippi, who's a very talented player, 6'4", 285. You know, he's another guy that they like a lot. Jeremiah Williams from California is another guy, another name to keep an eye on. So there's plenty of guys on the board for Notre Dame right now. Elijah Patman's a kid that's, I don't know if he's on the top of the board, but he's on the board. Jamar Thompson's a kid that they've talked to in the past. I believe they've offered Junior Chilamaka's younger brother. So there's some guys still on the board. This isn't just a, you know, Braden Parks, Devin Robertson thing, but those 2 guys plus Sam Lejeune are the 3 names that I hear most often with Notre Dame, along with Richie Flanigan. Braden Parks to me is a guy that I love that kid's film. And you know, he's a guy that could be a nose, could be a 3 technique. Devin Robertson's more of a pure nose. Those kids can play together. They can also rotate together. Braden's a guy that's having a monster junior season so far, 6'3", 295, 300 pounds, really twitchy, in, you know, short area, you know, type of athlete, can be a force, can give you the kind of beef in the middle you want. Devin Robertson's a true nose. He can stuff the run. He can sit there and eat up blocks. But he's also, Trev, you've seen his film, short, low to the ground, fly off the ball. He can be quick. He can penetrate. You know, he's a guy that you look at and say, boy, that's a Southern nose tackle right there, man, because he's strong, he's physical, he plays aggressively, but he's also got some twitchiness to him. Watching him this summer at Irish Invasion, and you get to see that up close and personal, like, okay, this kid's got some really impressive short area quickness. Those 2 guys are guys that I absolutely love. And I think Sam Lejeune's an excellent football player as well. Like, he's a really under-the-radar kid in this class for Notre Dame. He likes Notre Dame a lot. Is it enough for them to get him? You know, that I don't know, Trev. I don't know if it's enough to get him, but it's definitely enough for them to be in the conversation with him. But he's another really talented player that, surprisingly, one of 2 talented players from the state of Mississippi that Notre Dame's after. He'd be an interesting kid to see them get. But he's a really, really impressive player. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch Sam Lejeune yet, but that's another one that you're like, dude, they're after some dudes in the 2027 class at D tackle with Braden Parks, Devin Robertson, Sam Lejeune, and of course Richie Flanigan. So if you get two of those three, and it doesn't matter to me which combination of those three you get, I personally would want Braden Parks to be part of that because I love getting those Chicago kids. But if you take that part out of it and you take personal preference out of it, I might like this guy more than the other guy and just say, look, these are A group players for Notre Dame. You take that part out of it. You give me two of Lejeune, Parks, and Robertson to go with Richie Flanigan. That's a heck of a D tackle class. And it's the kind of D tackle class that Notre Dame has got to get, in my opinion. So I think they're all three really good football players. And then there's some others. Jeremiah Williams is a kid that I really liked at camp this summer as well. But I think that three, for me, is at the top of the board. And I know those guys are also high on the board for Notre Dame. I just know that there's some other guys on the board as well. But getting Richie Flanigan, like I said, allows you to narrow that scope a little bit and now focus on more of your big boys, knowing that you only need one more. They only need one more D tackle. They want two more, is my understanding.
I have a question, big picture, and this is going to fall into the category of what's next, but they've gotten a linebacker to help build this class around. They now have their first defensive lineman. Is the next commitment that they're looking for in the secondary on the back end of the defense, or do you just let that happen organically?
What do you mean?
Well, I like they picked up a linebacker commit. They picked up a defensive line commit. They don't have anybody on the back end yet. So that when you're building out a class, is the next person you go get a commitment from in the secondary to help be the foundation on the back end?
It's more organic. It's you have your guys you want, and how quickly do those guys want to jump in the class is really what it boils down to. With your secondary class, you're going after studs like Xavier Hassan and Josh Dobson and players like that. So those guys tend to take a little bit longer. Just like you haven't gotten Braden Parks yet. You haven't gotten Devin Robertson yet. Your commit at D tackle is a kid that, is obviously a bit of a legacy recruit. And so you've got to be prepared for that, to get that kid earlier. And some of these other guys are, Ellis McGaskin wasn't a kid that they were anticipating committing. He came on a visit this summer, and it was first visit. He just loved it. And he wanted to commit on the spot. They said, go home, think about it. And if you still want to commit, then we'll take your commitment. And he did. And so, that wasn't necessarily the plan. It wasn't like, hey, let's go get Ellis, then we're going to go get a D lineman. Then it's more organic. And it's sort of independent of each other. Like Mickens is like, hey, man, we need to get – this is our number at corner and safety. Go get her done. And it may take longer. It may be quicker than what Max Bulla's task at linebacker is. And it may be different than what Al Washington's task is. If you look at it, I mean, Mike Mickens – was kind of at the end of filling up the 2026 class. I mean, Nick Reddish, Joey O'Brien, Kari Adams, and, we're all very much later. Now, they got Chaz Smith very early. They got a surprise commitment from Aiden Pouncey, but a lot of their commitments came towards the end of the recruiting cycle this summer. And then, Max Bulla was kind of done pretty early at linebacker, what I mean? But it was more organic that way. It wasn't like the plan. It just kind of how it played out. So that's a good question. Good question.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense to me. Brian, any final thoughts on the commitment of Richie Flanigan?
It's a good pickup. Again, I got a text today that we thought this was going to happen today. It was supposed to happen a little bit sooner, but I wasn't surprised by it. The timing is always interesting on why kids do certain things at a certain time, but I'm hoping that this can be something that starts a run at the position that, hey, we've got 3 spots. We told you we had 3 spots, and there's more than 2 guys on the board. If you really want to be here, let us know, and so that's where I could even see maybe a D tackle being the next defensive commitment, Trev, because of landing a kid like Richie. Now spots start to fill up. We've talked about this in the past where, guys want to, you get your kind of put up or shut up moment. Guy tells you, oh, coach, I love you guys. And then somebody commits and he's like, yeah, I mean, I love you guys, but I still want to see this process play out. Maybe he doesn't love you as much as you thought he did. Sure. And now, or, you're going to take 2 and somebody commits and the kid's like, okay, coach, I'm ready. Cause I that happened to a receiver this year. There was a kid that wanted to kind of maybe drag his recruitment out a little bit longer. And then class started filling up, and he's like, all right, I'm good. I'm ready to go now. And that'll happen from time to time. And that's when you really know how bad certain kids want to be with you, because they'll kind of say, okay, my spots are getting limited, coach. I'm ready. Let's do this thing. So that's how I could see that going down.
Well, that's going to do it for our coverage of the commitment of Richie Flanigan. But don't go anywhere, folks. We're getting ready to wrap up the show, talk about big picture college football. A lot of the games happening this weekend. But before we get there, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell so you know whenever we go live. Whatever streaming platform you listen to us on, we'd greatly appreciate a 5-star review. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com.